Paso, about the history of Del Paso Boulevard in Sacramento. That won Producer's Choice in 2015 and got played all over the country. And then that also won Best Documentary in 6 Western states, the WAVE Award, Western Audiovisual Excellence Award. And then a couple years later, I did a documentary that got picked up by PBS and played nationally for 2 years about the history of Sacramento's urban forest. And that was called Made in the Shade. And in between those, I wrote a book called Sacramento City of Blood, which was, I guess, more, I do positive and I guess, if you want to call it negative, that's definitely on the darker side of things. And that's about Sacramento's darker history. And what inspired me to write that one was an article I read in one of the local newspapers that stated between, I think, the years 2002 and it's actually in my book. I have it right. I quoted it. Yeah, between 1971 and 1992, 15% of the serial killers in America resided in Sacramento, which I thought was an astonishing amount for what's essentially a small town. Even though it's the capital of California, Sacramento is not a very big city. And so
all right, let me stop there because that's interesting. That's really weird. Why do you think so many serial killers want to live in California's capital? Yeah, I mean, tell me.
Well, it's a crossroads. First off, you have to think about all the highways go through there. Well, one, you have incredibly long days, beautiful weather, right? So if you're a hunter, you want long, beautiful days. Great for hunting, right? Then, quick getaways, easy access to get in and out of the city quickly. It's always been a crossroads, whether it was the terminus of the Transcontinental Railroad, the original gateway to the West. You have the river system that brought the boats in there first, even before the rails. You have the airport, the international airport that goes through, and then you have the highway systems. So, combination of transportation and great weather, I think. Also transients, because of the days of the hobo. I don't know if that word is offensive, but I don't mean it in an offensive way. But migrant workers that still to this day go up there all the way up to what we call Apple Hill and pick the apples every year. And part I keep saying it's just catching myself. But anyways, that's history. Sacramento has that and has always had that ever since the Europeans got there. And so that definitely has a lot to do with it. I think it also has a lot to do with the blood that literally soaked into the ground after Sacramento, after they found gold there. When gold was discovered at Sutter's Fort, there were roughly, I think, 150,000 Native Americans in that area. And within 10 years, there were only 30,000 left. So you're talking between disease, starvation, and all-out slaughter. You lost 120,000 people. And it was legal. It was more than legal. There was a bounty on Native Americans there for almost a 10-year stretch of time, where it started off pretty cheap. I think it was something like $1, but it actually came up to a certain point where you could take a Native American scalp, to the Capitol building and get 5 gold pieces for it. So that's another thing that I found fascinating, was the whole myth of growing up watching all the westerns and seeing the Indians are going to scalp the cowboy. That is one of the biggest loads of BS that, as Americans, we were sold through John Wayne movies. It was the exact opposite. And it was the Americans that scalped the Native Americans, because the Indians were the ones with the long, beautiful hair, not the white guys. And besides buffalo hides, the biggest export that we had, buffalo hides, beaver pelts, and Native American scalps were the 3 biggest exports from this country to England. There was a quote in one of the newspapers that back then that the wall halls of England, of London, were literally lined and covered and decorated with Native American scalps. It was a very popular piece to have hanging in your living room in London back in the late 1800s, was a Native American scalp. So, gruesome. Absolutely gruesome and horrific. And it was also legal to take Native American children into your custody and make slaves out of them, as long as you could prove that they didn't have parents anymore, that their parents were dead. And there was one particular case where a man was seen coming into town, into Sacramento, old Sacramento, and he had two Native American children walking behind his horse, and they asked him, why do you have these children? He says, well, they're mine. I'm claiming them. They're going to be my slaves. He says, well, how do you know their parents are dead? He says, well, because I killed them. That's one of many, many articles that you can find in the old Sacramento Bee archives. And I think it was the Sacramento Daily Union was one of the old newspapers back then. So it was just all-out slaughter. And you also have to think about the people that went out there. Like, as soon as gold was discovered, it wasn't the people who were doing well back east that went out there to discover their fortune. It was normally the people who weren't doing well, the people who needed, another chance in life, the dregs of society, so to speak, the ones who had